picked it up with a long exposure.
We think we saw some purple haze, but that was kind of it because we have major light pollution here where we are. But a friend who's about 20 miles away, more in like the farmland, she had beautiful pictures. But then the next night, nothing.
So that was the sad part, is everybody went out night 2. And we didn't, because we were like, we did it last night. We were out at 1 a.m. But I tried this. Oh, you got another lamp. Okay. We've got 2 bright lamps. I've turned the lantern on, and you're right, it's warm, but at least that side of my face is a little bit lit.
Try this one.
That one just hurts my eyes. Sorry, guys. We did a rotation. We did a little bit of a environment shift.
I see you moved somewhere else.
Move it upstairs. We were downstairs in the kitchen, the living room, but now we're not. Okay, watch how this.
Yeah, that's.
It's so bright.
Yeah, that's not gonna work.
Yeah, I think it was okay.
You think it? Here, wait. We're gonna try.
You could shine it onto the wall that's in front of you, and then it would backlight you.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, that way it's not in your eyes.
That's good. Okay, that was good.
I got paper here too.
Thanks.
But that one, when you did that one, was really good. Against, yeah. What was it?
Cool.
No, I thought to get it. I just didn't get it because it was like
a version of me would have been pissed off, and I'm like, it's all good. That's an up level.
this light turn on right here.
What about?
I don't know if this thing's working. Did the light go on?
No.
Oh, okay. It's all the behind the scenes podcast stuff.
Dice has to go to the bathroom. He'll be right back.
That's totally fine.
No worries.
We know how that goes. Would you like to change the order of your names?
What do they have? Oh, because of how they're sitting.
Yeah.
That's weird. You're opposite, and we're actually. I'm here. Annika and Dice is there.
Oh, really?
It is aligned, and you're Shelly and Austin, even though we see you as Austin and Shelly.
It's flipped. Oh, I wonder if it's like in the mirror settings or something.
I don't know.
That is wild.
Okay.
Let's see.
Because I noticed when I recorded it and published it, it had it flipped.
Okay,
Like,
so let's just
maybe flip it, and let's both flip it and see what happens. I think there's some like setting in the video that mirrors it, because we are so used to looking ourselves in a mirror. So it's interesting.
So look, so he was like, do you want to change the order of your names? Which I had on like and I smell. And I was like, but that is the order that we're sitting. And I was like, but when I look at you, it says Shelly and Austin. Another person.
We'll try this and see what happens.
It's just wild. That's just wild.
But I changed. Okay, now you're Austin and Shelly, so that looks right. Does this not look right?
This looks right for us.
For us, it looks right.
Yeah, I changed it.
Okay.
Yeah. Woo!
Okay.
It only took 10 minutes. We got it.
I'm recording it on my other computer. I'm recording it here. If you feel like recording it, go for it. And then what we should do is just mark what time we get started, and then I'll fix it in
flip it up quicker.
Yeah. Where's my little thing that goes chop?
I don't know where it is.
Oh. Do you guys want to chit chat a little and then start, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, let's chat.
Okay.
So I've been thinking about this podcast for several days when Austin was like, hey, we have Annika and Dice with chores. And then all of a sudden it was like a light bulb went off over so much stuff. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, how about considering sex a chore? Because that's what it came to me. And that's why I was like, I was like, okay, it's almost like classifying the different things, because I was like, you literally could clip up so many podcasts about this and about chores in general, because so many people have different definitions about chores. Some people think feeding themselves is a chore.
So are we starting this? Or
I guess so.
We are.
We don't have to. I just was saying I've been excited to do this, and then earlier today we hadn't eaten for a while, and it like really took our energy levels like oof, like bad. And so then we ate, and then it was like that tired feeling. It was like, oh my gosh, we both want to take a nap. And we just separated for a while and grounded and regrouped off, not together. Because sometimes that's a chore together. I told you I can take chore into anything. And so anyway, then we've just been like looking forward to doing this, because I was a little worried, only because like our energies like dropped so much. And I was like, I want to have good energy for this, but I do. We do.
Well, like,
Mhm.
so are there any behind the scenes or back channel discussion you want to have also?
Yeah, let's be real about that.
Shit, I don't know. I mean, I think I'd be ready to dive in.
Yeah, I'm good.
I hear you on the energy. I'm really tired today, so it's just like, all right.
How did you guys feel Saturday and Sunday energy wise with the geo?
I had a lot of energy this weekend.
Okay.
I think actually, I don't know. Our weekend required having endurance and energy. So I don't know how much of that was like authentic energy and how much of it was like forced energy.
Okay.
I mean, I was deep in the performance mode Saturday all day, and I was riding high that day. Like, it felt amazing. Things were like really coming together. It kind of felt that way like the whole weekend. So we've been in this bit.
Okay.
It's like the crash for me.
His week,
Mhm.
his work week,
Okay.
and simultaneously the start of a new work
Yeah.
week.
Oh,
It
yeah.
has been hard, but that's short term.
Yeah, like kind of the ebb and the flow.
Yeah, but this is just a product of this phase of life, which is that he's doing a 6-week stint of 6 shows a week, and Sunday night is when he's done with his 6th show. So then Monday morning or Monday and Tuesday are like low energy days.
There's been a lot of energy management for me, but I've just been going with it. But yeah, like Saturday in particular that was a really interesting time. And that was when like potentially there was going to be more of the Northern Lights happening, but it didn't really happen here that night as much. But I don't know. That was interesting because you could see it in the atmosphere, and you could feel something in the ether when you could see the Northern Lights. That was really interesting.
Jace got some good pictures. Mine were okay.
You couldn't really see it with your eye that well, though. A little bit. It was like this misty glow.
You could see it better like on a phone or on a camera?
Yeah, if you do like long exposure on a phone or on a camera, it would actually get the aurora and the...
So you could be looking at the sky and be like, I don't see anything. But your camera, if you do slow exposure.
That's what Kat was saying.
Okay, that makes more sense.
So when I looked south, I could actually see some hints of that purple haze, right?
Yeah.
But then I went to get my camera and I came back outside and I like stepped on a bee. I got stung in my foot. And then I was like, maybe that's a sign to just go inside and go get grounded or something. And so I was just like, took the stinger out, cleaned it up, and then I just left it alone. But I did see a little bit purple. Yeah.
I thought the purple was cool.
We were noticing here that Saturday we took a walk and the sun was extra bright, and then it was on the cement, and I just felt blinded even though I had the sunglasses on. And at one point I just was like, I need to get home. I feel drunk. What's going on? And then once I got home and got grounded, I was okay. And then throughout the day, I would feel up and down. And so I was doing a little bit of research, and some people were saying you might feel dizzy, you might feel like off kilter and all that. And then Sunday, Austin had those symptoms where he felt drunk and he felt off, and I felt okay. And so that's kind of been where my energy's been the last probably week. It's one day it will be really high, and then the next day, boom. So for you guys to say you have 6 days of like having to have that really intense, how do you then on your days off like ground and really regenerate? And
I'm trying to actively figure that out. I think I just need downtime. I need to create that for myself and rest, but it's just weird because Mondays there's stuff going on, so I have to create more space for myself for sure. But it was interesting that you say that because the other day we were actually talking. We were saying
Day
that
was it?
things
Thursday.
felt really like really off center. We were like it was very tilted. And
Okay.
as you bring that up, it was like we really were talking about how we were all feeling that.
Okay.
And we were feeling, and now that you mentioned drunk, like I have felt this like kind of floatiness to things going on. Like it just feels like I'm going from place to place. There's just this like feeling of, I don't know, floatiness. Maybe it's just like what's happening, all the events. I'm chalking it up to the later nights that I've been having and things like that. But that's interesting that you're reflecting that too. Yeah, just trying to get sleep though. That's the one thing I've working on.
That's kind of funny. Our last meeting, we talked about sleep. I saw someone in town that hasn't really liked or commented on many videos, maybe a couple. And they were like, hey, I saw the thing on sleep. And yeah, that's totally relatable on the TC2O thing. And I was like, okay, all right, we'll do some more of that. And so here we are again talking about sleep and energy levels. And like I had dreams that were like various levels deep, and it was actually hard to wake up out of them. And I thought that was interesting, given all this energy stuff. So it seems to me like the first part of the podcast is current energy and current things, and then we can move into the chores.
Yeah, I mean, we're just warming up, but yeah, I mean, we're just like, I'm just noticing that the more space I create in my life, or the more awareness I have, then I have different physical symptoms. I think I have experienced these before. I know the holistic psychologist printed something a few weeks ago, a post where she mentioned if you physically get ill going into a place like all the time or something to this effect, then it's very possible you're not supposed to be in that space. Like she's referencing energy. And so for me, I recognize that back when I started as a nurse, so 18 years ago, it would be, I would start to get little low-grade fevers around 3 a.m. and I would take Tylenol and it would go away. And this went on for 6 weeks. And it was super, and now I recognize it was probably my system saying maybe this isn't like where you're supposed to be. But so I reference that back to kind of the feelings that we're having now, because it's like, this I know I'm supposed to be doing, because I'll think to myself, oh, would I, because you mentioned, Dice, like how busy you are, and this is just like a season of it right now. And that's how we're feeling. We're going to these events. And then I feel like Austin's beautiful and so amazing at like responding back and I'm wiped out and trying to figure out like where to create this space to then respond back in some way. And so that's something that I've really been having to work through, because sometimes I'm feeling like, oh, it would be great if I just went and got a job somewhere and people tell me what to do, versus making my own schedule and doing my own thing now. And it's a real thing though, because there's times I don't feel so good working as an entrepreneur, but then I reflect back to there were times I didn't feel good working for someone else. So I have to be able to hold the duality and then just also like kind of understand the messages and like where I'm feeling in my body and the safety. Because that's the other thing. Do I feel safe? Is this something that's an illusion in my head, or is this something that's like something greater going on that I need to tune into more? But creating that space and then being able to listen is key, because I did start to feel this past week we were doing so much that I wasn't allowed. I was starting to feel very much like an old version of myself, of the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
And I was trying to like, okay, what are we going to do with this information? What are we going to let go of? And I was like, it's kind of challenging to hold that structure and flow and all this at the same time. But what we kind of were realizing is if you don't do that, if you don't like integrate and disintegrate stuff as you go, then you're just chasing around different things and you're not doing your aligned work for your business or your life. And so we were like really trying to anchor in each of these experiences. Like we've been invited to a bunch of different things, including after this tonight, we got invited to go to an art and drawing night again. And it's cool, and like-minded people like you guys, and like conversations much like this. And so it's like, when we were done with that last weekend at like midnight, last Monday, Shelly and I were like, let's let's just go to In-N-Out and have some food. That way we can come back down and then go to sleep, because otherwise we're not going to go to sleep.
Right.
And it's like, we're also learning like In-N-Out's like one of our biohacking tips of getting grounded with like meat or whatever. But at the same time, we were like not that hungry, but we know it works. And we were like, now we're aware, and now we're like, we really need to pack our cooler with food too when we go do this stuff. And we have to allow ourselves a little bit of time to kind of like unwind or debrief, or what did we learn tonight and who do we want to circle back with? Because sometimes Shelly's, you're circling back with everybody and it overwhelms me. And I was like maybe we shouldn't meet so many people. I'm meeting a lot of like really cool people that feel like aligned in this area and effort.
Allowing myself to create the space within myself, so it's a safety to meet people and to follow up, or to, you know, follow through, because this is something that I haven't done. Maybe in college, but college I didn't have a mortgage and a house and children and animals and a spouse and all of these like other things, and so I had the space. And so now it's figuring out, where am I creating the space? Because one of the things last week I really wanted to do was drop back more into my body, because I realized I was like spinning in my head, and my marijuana use had gone back up and a few other things. And so I was like recognizing. And so one of the things is I wanted to start like working out again, because I had fallen off. And then I also wanted to add yoga at night, at least 3 times a week, just do really gentle. And I did not get a chance to do any of the yoga because we did so much. And then by the time the weekend rolled around and there was a lot of activities for that, it was like, I just want to sleep in bed. And so now I'm just visualizing myself. That's great. And I can give myself permission to do that. But wouldn't it be, I'm trying to visualize more of like truly planning and dropping into my body and like feeling how my body will feel with yoga. Because I recognize I was looking at it as the dreading. So a chore.
Sure.
So let's go to a chore. I was looking at it as a chore of, I need to go work my body. And then I list out all these reasons, but they're not reasons for me. They're reasons from another story I've heard, meaning like, you're going to look good if you do that, instead of me being like, no, remember when you felt good. And then I can actually remember the exact time and it'll drop in, or the exact hanging out with people, maybe talking about yoga or exercise, or when I really had to accomplish something physically hard. And that just then takes the chore away. And then it's opened up the space within me to continue going, instead of feeling like dread, instead of feeling like all these like lower things that I recognize that's not even my story, you know, that. And then I have energy, honestly. So that's kind of coming to me right now when I was saying that.
What do you guys think about all that stuff?
There's so much. Okay, I can speak to some of that, which is what I like that you're speaking to, Shelly, is almost being able to calibrate in real time. There's a part of me that wanted to respond in this way of, for me and the work that I do, it requires so much that I have to have also a lot of downtime. So part of, instead of looking at the rest as this is something I have to do to feel better, it's like a weaving in of this rhythm of, it's not that everything has to slow down, it's that sometimes you are going to be at a sprint. So then what's the counterbalance to that? You have to then go slow. And if your pace is like here, then you could probably calibrate more in real time. But if you are packed like that, there's this awareness that you're speaking to that needs to happen in terms of really being able to drop in any given moment and kind of do that physical scan and say, okay, where am I right now? And maybe in 2 hours it's going to be different, and maybe 5 hours is going to be different. But that ability to like calibrate in the moment, not just, because my initial response was like, oh yeah, you have to weave it in. You have to like, okay, if you know you're going to go fast, if you know you're packing it in for a week, then what needs to happen after that? But it's also more in the moment to moment, real time type of a thing. So I think it sounds to me like you both are like in the space of being very aware of your needs and also creating new relationships with your intuition, with your cues, and honoring them and respecting them. So that's a beautiful thing.
That brought up something, but I want to hear from Dice first.
Yeah, I mean, as far as what you're saying, it makes me think too of like repetition and how sometimes you have to go around like the cycle of repetition to know like what to anticipate, what's going to happen next time. And it's especially when things are new and you're shifting and you're doing a lot of new things and setting them in, how it might sometimes take you off balance, or like it can take a lot of energy and things like that. But then knowing, okay, what happens like the next time that comes around? Maybe we need to prepare food ahead of time when these events are happening, so we're taking care of that. Kind of thing comes from
Chores.
repetition and from setting the intention, and from doing it over and then getting that information and trying some things up. That came from me, but also a lot around chores and like what really defines what a chore is. And I really would love to dive into that, because there's so much around that you were saying. I feel like chore is not so much a particular action or thing that you have to do, but maybe the energy that we have towards it and how we define that thing. So in that case, like anything can be a chore, and it's even the thing that you want to do and desire to do one time can be a chore for that version of yourself at another time. So just interesting around what is a chore versus like desire or a want or a responsibility. So there's so much there. And what is that for me? Yeah, I was just wondering that as you were talking. What exactly is a chore?
I was just, when you were talking, I decided to look it up right here on the Google.
What's it say?
Chore, a routine task, especially a household one. And another definition is an unpleasant but necessary task. I was like, okay. But what's interesting is you could actually turn your chores into a ritual or something play-like, and then suddenly you've removed like kind of the, I don't know, the negativity or the energetics around it. Like you guys were kind of hinting at that with what's the energy of it. And so I think that might be a good way to get started of like, yes, okay, there are necessary things, but do they have to be unpleasant to be a chore? Or could you choose to do it a different way where it's a little more pleasant than unpleasant? And then all of a sudden the energetics change around the chores. That's kind of what I'm thinking at the moment.
It's interesting he says that. So we're getting ready to have guests at our house because my son's graduating from high school and college. And so my parents are coming. And we've just done surface clean and haven't really deep cleaned. And so
back up one step. Our housekeeper for 10 years was kind of no longer a match about 6 months ago.
Yes.
And so then suddenly like we had to clean.
So we had to create the space, like legit. That was one thing that when we were both working in occupations, the teaching and nursing, it was like, that was one thing that we gifted, and it was great. Let me tell you, having somebody that can come in and like clean, I loved it. And we had a great relationship and stuff. And so now it's going back to, we just did surface type of cleaning because we didn't create the space for it. And plus it was winter, it was a whole bunch of stuff. And so now that we're in the summer months or spring, and then we're having guests come and stuff, like one of the things was there's a local healer in town and she makes a spray and she calls it guardian spray. And so she was like saying, you mix it in with your cleaning, you like spray it before you do it. I'm like, okay, great. And so I will be honest, in the deep cleansing that I've been doing over the last several weeks, this has been amazing because it makes me be in the present. It makes me have intentions, set intentions, truly like step into a room and visualize what I'm going to do, how I'm going to accomplish it, and then complete it. And for me to be able to do that has been amazing because many things I start and I'm not able to finish. But now it puts me in the present moment. And I don't know if I would have had that had I not just been like, I'll try that spray.
Like right here, it's like you're changing an unpleasant something to something more fun because you get to spritz it all over the ground and you get to think, and then suddenly you're shifting it from a necessary task or a routine to a ritual
or a burden, because I looked at like cleaning the house as a burden to me, just like, that's a burden, that's not my job or whatever, like super old way. Because now I'm like, no, when I actually got down and was doing the cleaning, I was like, this isn't that bad. Like I finally just said to Austin, I really need you to like help with the cleaning, because I come from a generation, and this is just me, but I always felt like it was my responsibility, even though I worked outside the home. Like most people have two households that work, but I still felt really hesitant to ask for him to help. Even though he helps all the time, I still feel very hesitant and very, it's almost like shameful that I'm not able to do it all, but you can't do it all. You can't. And so that helps significantly too, where we finally just broke down chores and stuff, because I finally told him there were certain chores that I don't care to do, and one of them is
after 14 years of marriage, you would have think that's one of the first things you tell somebody.
No, I think I felt very shame, like in letting you know, and now I just laugh. I'm like, who cares? Like people have their icks when
I don't like touching the food on the plate, and I'm like, really, that's the reason? I'm like, okay, all right. Now what are we gonna do with that information?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, fine, I'll wash the dishes if you put them away.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I'm like, hey, the dishes are done.
And sometimes I'm done for the night. Like I'm just like, just leave it, and I'll have to unload and reload in the morning. And sure enough,
So that's the deal. If they're clean and they're ready, she'll unload and then I'll reload. But if she waits till the next morning, then she's unloading and reloading. So it's kind of like it's the give and the take. It's not like I'm keeping like an Excel spreadsheet or an Airtable trying to click off every little thing. Like sometimes I'll unload too, or sometimes whatever. But it took 14 years and psychedelic integration to figure out that she didn't like touching dirty dishes. But it's not even dishes of other people. It's just dishes of mostly us. So what's something that came up for you guys with chores or whatever, where you like suddenly were able to find balance and harmony or something like that?
For me, it's chores to me feel like something that takes effort, or something that is, yeah, like some sort of requirement, some sort of there's pressure on it. There's some level of pressure to repeat, pressure to do, pressure to get done, whatever. And there were certain things that I just could not figure out how to get done, how to do it in a way that wasn't so painful. And so I started activity stacking until I enjoyed the experience, and then kind of created the ritual around it. So if I'm washing dishes, like a lot of times that can be really uncomfortable for me if I'm standing for too long, if it's been 15-20 minutes and I'm not done, all of a sudden my back is hurting, whatnot. So I'm really tuned into the physical. And so I notice, though, if my mind and maybe my interest is piqued, then I will be able to move through tasks in a way that feels more easeful. So if I'm doing dishes, I will listen to a podcast. And so I'm engaged and I'm thinking, and because I'm kinesthetically engaged, like mentally, I'm so present with the podcast. And so I really enjoy that time and that space to do that, as opposed to just sitting and only listening to the podcast. So yeah, that's how I like make it more enjoyable for myself, is activity stacking with things that I actually like, things that could work. So laundry, folding laundry, I like stack it with talking to family members on the phone, or a loved one on the phone. And if it's the whole couple loads, like it'll take me 15-20 minutes, but it won't feel like much effort because I'm engaged elsewhere, and I don't feel like it's a bypassing, because I'm doing the job and it's good and it gets done, and that feels good to me. So that's how I do it, and it really helps me not look at it as such a painful experience.
If Dice plays the guitar while you're doing the dishes, do you like that?
If he's not doing anything and I am doing something,
yeah, because like sometimes if she'll just hang out with me in the kitchen and talk or whatever, then I feel better about doing it, and then I'm not the only one doing the dishes. So if she's in there and talking to me, or she'll fire up a podcast, she'll just stand there or something.
He doesn't really like to listen to stuff. Well, that I was thinking that I can get in a flow if I'm listening, like you were describing. But a lot of times Austin doesn't like that, and I don't want to wear earphones.
This is interesting too. Like looking at my human design chart, it says that my digestion type is quiet. And so I was asking the lady, Maureen Webb, who did my human design and Gene Keys, and she was like, that's digestion of food and thoughts and ideas. So sometimes people will do work and listen to music. I don't like listening to music when I'm working. Like maybe sometimes, but if you fired up all the music and we're trying to clean, to me, I find it really distracting. But like Shelly loves to like put on Fleetwood Mac and just go to town on all of her chores. But for me, I'm like, I'll like if she does that, I'll put in my earplugs. So if she wants something, she has to be like, hey. So I was just curious, like you mentioned the podcast and doing something else. If Dice was like playing the guitar and you were doing the dishes, would that feel good to you or not? I'm just curious.
No, and my honest reason is that if I'm in a space where we're getting things done,
Mhm.
if I'm getting things done and he's not, and we've talked about this, that's kind of this, he hasn't said these words, but like a double standard. Like you made the choice that right now is the time, the appropriate time for you to do this chore. But because I'm choosing to do these things at a different time, you're upset because you're working on this thing and I'm not. And so there was a long period of time, many occasions where I would become disgruntled at his just sitting as I was like tending to the home or whatever, cooking, cleaning, whatever the thing was, which is like very unfair. And I recognize that now, but I did that for a while. Yeah, certainly. Like we enjoy each other's time. So I love like when we fold laundry together and we're able to just get that done, it makes it better for me because I'm like, cool, now we're doing this together. We're both engaged in it and it can get done so much faster.
I tend to have more energy than Shelly, and I don't know why, but I, I don't know. The lady that did the human design said I'm like Energizer Bunny. I just keep going and going and going. But if she's in bed scrolling and I'm doing the dishes, I'm pissed. But if she's standing in the kitchen and she's looking something up and I'm doing the dishes, I don't mind as much because I think I'm together with her. And I like she worked in the hospital, I worked different jobs. It was like two ships passing in the night a lot of times. And so I was always wanting just, can I just have some quality time with you? And so when she was with me in proximity in the kitchen, even though she was doing something else, sometimes I was more okay with it because usually it was just the two ships passing in the night. But this is a great point of showing like what works for one couple might not work for another or vice versa. And I think that's something very important in like the whole couples take on chores is you got to find out what works good for you and your relationship, not necessarily someone else.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I feel like we tackle a lot of things like together as a team. We do a lot of tasks like in tandem. That tends to be the way we approach a lot of things. Like we we just kind of make it into a team thing. So then like when we're rocking that space, then things feel like they're getting done quicker and more fun and faster and more fluid. And the opposite side of that is like sometimes it's like you might wait on the other person or feel like if you have to do it alone, oh, it feels like more. So there's
Right. Yeah.
that's kind of the balance that we strike. And then there's some things that we might naturally take on that is because that was another thing too. There's like different charges that people have towards different things. Like
Oh
if
yeah.
someone really right hates doing the dishes, another person doesn't mind. That's an easy exchange. So I try to do things like that for me aren't a big deal, like as much like taking out the trash and that
Moving
kind of
heavy
thing.
things.
Yeah, just some things that make like to me aren't as that I don't have as much resistance to naturally. So then we'll kind of align with that.
Yeah. Like I
Um,
think last time you mentioned this will carry the laundry up or
mhm.
down. I don't remember which direction. Uh, because you don't like to do that. But
Yeah,
Dice
we
doesn't mind.
I broke my foot a couple of summers ago, and we had a two-story house, and with actually both sets of stairs, I had fallen down, and that's part of how I hurt my foot. And I just was like, I had this moment of like, why am I doing this? There's another one of us who's like able-bodied, and I'm like step by step with a boot, like going down and up. It took me like 20 minutes to go down and back up every time. And that is how that thought kind of came about. Like, this could be so much more easeful if I just asked for a little bit of help. And I don't mind doing the laundry, but like carrying something heavy with a broken foot and a boot, that's so much effort for me when it wouldn't have taken him much effort to just go down and up really fast. So it sparked a good conversation.
That is the key right there. It is literally asking with clear communication what you need help with and why, and some possible ways that they could do it, right? Or you got something?
Yeah, because this was part of the thing that I was going to talk to in this discussion is the weird space that I get into of not wanting to ask for help. And then all of a sudden having those like light bulbs go off and be like, why am I not asking for help? This is like some ridiculous behavior. And so I've been thinking quite a bit about that because I didn't understand. And so part of it is I realized I saw it modeled by other women in my family, like resisting help. Certainly in the hospital setting I was in, it was very like you would ask for help and be told no. And so then when you get told no repeatedly, it can like really bring you down significantly. And so then you just decide I'm not going to ask for help anymore. And so then I think for me, I brought that anger into the house and then was really like, don't help me, not asking for help. It's almost, I think part of it is a bit of the ADHD and the PTSD too. But it was also waiting till last minute to let him know about things and then making it like a big deal, like that weird anxiety that I thrived off of for a long time. But now I recognize why. And I also recognize why I wasn't asking him for help and now how I can and not feel if he tells me like, I don't have the space. I mean, like I said, occasionally I'm like, I can't do the dishes tonight. I'll have to do double duty in the morning. And so then I already have that like visualized and planned. And occasionally I will get up and be like, I'm like hoping that he will have done it all. But
and sometimes I do.
He does, but that's not necessarily my intent. But I understand that not asking, even now, it's something that I have to actively work on.
We're literally home all the time, from working from home, business from home. Like we cook from home and we're trying to fuel our bodies as best as we can. Before we used to just go out to eat. We buy all this like farm fresh to you or what is it, Hello Fresh or Blue Apron or whatever. And it's you buy the stuff, you throw the shit in the trash and you're done. You don't have really much cleanup. But now you got a lot more cleanup and you're more intentional with your food. And it's okay. Tell us that you're an entrepreneur without telling us you're an entrepreneur. I do dishes all goddamn day.
Truly.
But like for a while there, like I didn't like doing dishes because it kind of bothered my nerve damage in my hand. But then I started changing my mindset around it. And I was like, I could do hot water, I could do cold water, I could just do it and do a nice job. And then this yoga teacher was like, why don't you just, instead of getting mad that people can't load the fucking dishes, right? Why don't you just load them and be like, I'm the best goddamn dish loader fucking ever. And put them in there and don't worry about it. And like, suddenly when I'm changing my mind, then suddenly my hand's not hurting or my back's not hurting as much. Or sometimes if it does hurt, I'm like, oh, I'll just take a quick break. Literally, you like stretch yourself for a couple minutes. Hey, how's it going? What are you up to? Come back, finish up, and it's done. Instead of like, my back fucking hurts and no one fucking does the dishes with me and fuck all of them. And it's, man, that little spiral can go. Or you could just be like, hey, I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna step outside. I could pet the dog, the cats, say hi. And I like what you were saying about folding the clothes. Make a phone call, 20-minute phone call. Or when I used to drive to work, it was either 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 40, an hour. And you kind of know who you could call during those times, right? And now I'm thinking what you're thinking, like a podcast, or Dice sends me all kinds of interesting videos. And I'm like, okay. Now I'm like, I could watch one of those videos while I'm doing the laundry or listen. So it's like kind of, you were saying, I think, what was the word? Activity mapping or
stacking. It's like body doubling. It's like body doubling where you're doing something in tandem with somebody else, but it's like doing an activity in tandem with another activity, especially if it's like high preferred with a high unpreferred. So I know I'll feel more connected and grounded and happy having connected with a family member or a friend. And even though my body doesn't love to fold repetitively for 20 minutes, like it doesn't even remotely bother me. And like you were saying about your hand, not noticing it when you're tuned in elsewhere, like it's so much easier to move through a process when it's coupled with something enjoyable.
And I wasn't like you brought up earlier, I think it's important that we don't dissociate from our body while we're doing stuff like chores or whatever, and that we're like intentionally, oh, I'm gonna do this while I'm doing this other thing that's more fun too, to round out the experience and not to like just dissociate, because we've talked a lot about like dissociation from our bodies. Yeah, go ahead, Dice.
No, I mean, it's just making me think back to the like I feel like chores, because by definition, as you read it, it's something that unnecessary but unpleasant task. There's already a charge of like you have to it takes effort, or you have to force, or you have to do something with your body that you don't want to do. And like even as we're talking, I'm realizing that chores have a lot connected to it, like a lot of our childhood, like there's chores is used as punishment a lot, right? They're used as punishment. There's a lot playing into chores from like our families, what they modeled, what type of thing they might have enjoyed doing, not enjoyed doing. Did they use it as a punishment? All of these things, that there's just the energy for a chore has that. I have to take my body and physically move this. Now all of a sudden the body feels heavy. This is how I experience. I'm like, I gotta carry this bag of bones somewhere and fold the thing. And so that charge that has around the chores, and how you can, that's an internal thing too that you can shift, and like how you're present. But it's easy to dissociate in that space because you don't want to do it. It's easy to do chores while you're angry. It's just an interesting space because by definition, by like how we have experienced it, is something that has been used as like a punishment, or that I started to very much experience chores like that. So then it's like wanting to avoid doing, as you didn't want to. Sometimes you can get into that kind of arms race of, I can withhold doing something as long as possible. When you have roommates in college and you're like, I'm not gonna do the dishes because they're not doing the dishes, and then nobody's doing it, and it's that who can go the longest without doing it. I know I'm guilty of that because of that like energy towards chores, where like it wasn't taught to me, as it wasn't introduced as something to integrate with your life. It was very much, you don't want to do this. And so it was for me when I was told, I was given an exercise to observe my body while I was doing the dishes, be in my body. And when I started to like try that exercise out, I learned a lot. And one of the main things was like my body felt so tense. My body felt like I was just hurrying to just get this done. I was like, my thoughts were like grumble, like just trying to get through with this shit. And as soon as I noticed that, it's like, oh wow, like my body's carrying all this tension. So I tried to use that as a space of, let me find some ease, or let me just feel the water. Let me like, how can you transform that space energetically into something that can benefit you can be present in? And I think then we find this flip where like a lot of these chores, a lot of these things that we don't want to do, like cleaning your floors, or like just things that you really like are trying to avoid, how they're really powerful rituals that you can transmute that into something really powerful. But it's definitely an intentional work with the chores, just because there's so much attached to it. It's like childhood stuff, cultural things, like your own.
Even for me, what comes to mind for me is that I use chores to hide my addiction, and also to, I don't even know, mask it more. I mean, I guess hiding is the same as the masking, but previously. And so then for me, chores started to become not healthy, and then also just like memories from other incidences, but then also reprogramming or really understanding that was a different version of myself. And so when I go in the kitchen to clean, I don't need to have a glass of wine. Like I don't have to have a glass of wine with me to clean. And so I think that's why kind of talking it out a little bit and letting people know, like just having the anger I was having towards cleaning. And I don't know why. Now that I'm seeing it a lot more, and then setting these intentions, like you were saying, even just me buying this Guardian spray and being able to set intentions. And now I feel so much better about the chores. I was like mind blown because I think I was going at it as a different version of myself when I used chores to be like covering things that I was up to, and that wasn't in alignment with myself. But it's not me any longer. I have caught myself recently when I've been in the kitchen, like kind of just wanting like a wine glass to hold. I don't need wine in it. I mean, I can put whatever in it, but for some reason I was like, that's interesting. I think that's some real subconscious programming of like marketing and stuff I used to see. And
maybe that's when it was fun.
Yeah, that might have been too, the little bit of those memories of when it was fun. And then for me, it was not fun.
So like Dice brought up something interesting. Like sometimes I get caught in that of like just like scrubbing everything, and then I notice my jaw gets tense, and I'm like, wait, like I don't need. Then literally I'm like check in with my face, check in with my neck and my back, and I'm like, I don't need to be all tense like doing this. I could just chill and do this. It's not like I need to be done in 2.5 to 6 seconds or something. And so like just doing that changes my whole mind. Or like if you're really into like the 3D, like scrubbing away and you're getting all tense, you're like, oh, I should maybe back off a little bit. So I liked what you were saying there, Dice. Do you notice that when you do dishes that you get like tense all of a sudden?
Sometimes, yeah.
Can you pull yourself out of it when you're aware of it?
When I'm aware of it, yeah.
How do you become aware of it?
I think I just check in with myself because I think there's something flashes and I realize I need to check in. There's something going on and I need to check in with myself and be like, wait, slow down, what's going on?
Annika, how about for you? Do you sometimes notice you get tense doing dishes, or what? What makes you become aware of it?
Just usually it's noticing fatigue, noticing that my body needs to, like what you said, just like stretch, or I notice it specifically with those tasks. I think that with a lot of chores, there's a lot of physical strain involved with it. Like folding laundry, depending on how you're doing it, maybe you're folded over the bed, maybe you're standing over the sink, maybe you're, mopping the floors in this way, and you have to fold over to pick up the pan, and the brushing. And I mean, there's just so many things that require that. And the beautiful thing about, say, something like gardening is you're moving around and you're like doing different types of movement. But with cleaning and things, it's a lot of the same repetition of movement, which after not many times of doing it will cause fatigue in the body. So that's usually for me, is if I notice that little bit of like throbbing fatigue, or just if I notice my body wants to shift, like I will just kind of take that time and be like, okay.
So that's the cue.
And standing in the same, it's just about a readjustment. It's just, okay.
So like I've been to 2 different posture physical therapist trainers online, and they were like, before you do stuff, like get yourself in alignment first. Or if I like think about it, then I'm like, oh, hold up, I need to deep breath, look up, look down, be aligned. And then sometimes I just spread my legs more when I'm standing at the sink so that it's more at like ergonomic level with my hands and arms. Or like when I was sweeping the other day, instead of just doing this sweeping, I like literally did like a lunge and then swept and then lunge and then swept and then whatever. And I was like, I can fuck around in the kitchen and have a good time. It doesn't have to be like I must sweep like 6-inch strokes only. And I don't need to do that. And then sometimes I just wipe all the shit on the counter onto the floor and sweep it on the floor. And then when I'm done, like I got a Roomba like a year ago. And like I like to have that come through and do the final pass. And what's interesting is, from an energetic point of view, when I leave the house and come back, I can tell the Roomba has been through. Energetically, you can like see it and feel it. And I'm like, this is really interesting to ponder.
That really is. As we're talking about this too, from you, it's coming up is also, what's the cultural sort of component and chores, or once again, how we were brought up. Like for me, like I mentioned the last time we spoke, my mom did everything, like cooked, cleaned, worked, everything. And that was like that was the model for whatever we had for us.
Oh, it did.
You guys did.
Oh,
okay. I think we're still good. So yeah, my mom had modeled the doing of all the chores, doing of everything in the house. And then it would be like when it was just never taught to me, take care of this or try to do that. And when I tried to do those things, it was like, don't do that. So there was this very much the way that the roles were, and the way that she's showing her love is don't do anything. And that's I think more on the Latin America spectrum. It's very that type
like with boys, young boys.
Yeah, and
she
men just don't do anything, and it's at their convenience. So it was really, I think, an interesting space of there's this whole dynamic of like how is it culturally seen or brought up. Because I'll still like I'll go home, I'll do a dish, I'll try to help my mom, and then I'm getting yelled at by her to this day. So it's very different with American people who have people teach their kids, you got to do X amount of chores, you got to take out the trash, you got to do this, right? So I was fascinated, and that's why I would try to do certain things, and then it was like, no, I'm actively told not to. But then as I became an adult, it was like, I don't know what I'm doing, because I was never really taught how to do anything. So when I'm going like outside to live on my own, there's a lot of stuff that I really had to learn for the first time. Like I just did not have the skills or awareness, or like, it just wasn't really. So there's a version to like things that take effort that then becomes built, and like myself and people, you have to deconstruct that. Now a chore, it's like demands more effort, and it's like you have to go through your internal resistance to try to get that thing done. And
well, it's like whose story is it? Is it like your mom's story? Is it your story? Like we were talking in the car on the way home, like oftentimes parents will raise their kids in a way that would have kept the parents safe, even though that threat isn't there anymore. Here we are with chores. It's, oh, Dice, don't do it that way. Just let me handle it. And then you're like, oh, I'm always fucking it up. I shouldn't do it. And then you're in like relationship now, and you're like, wait, like my partner's upset with me. Am I doing it wrong, or I should do this at all? And then it's really
right.
like opening up a conversation. It's oh shit. And it's, when I was a stay-at-home dad for a little while back in like 2010, 2011-ish, Nolan was little. He was like 6 or something. Like I took care of all the shit at the home front because I was like, I want to make sure that I'm not one of any of her nurse friends' husbands that just fucking played video games, smoked weed, didn't do shit. I was like, I'm gonna make sure I like make the food and bring the food and take Nolan to school and pick him up and make him get him to soccer practice and fold all the clothes. I never knew I'd be fucking good at folding towels and shit. And then I became good at it. And then I'm like, because I wanted to be like, I didn't want people to think I was like being a loser. And so I was like making sure I would be like doing a good job, but then waiting for her to tell me I did a good job. And I'm like, that took some time to get through of not needing to be validated to do my chores, but do them in a way that like I wanted to do them. And I can see she has something that she wants to say that's burning up. Go ahead.
Part of my programming was that if a guy is going to stay home, which is totally cool, he'll manage like the whole home front, and that's great. That would be kind of what I'd expect in the reverse role. But the problem with that is due to some, I don't know, just complete unawareness, subconscious, whatever, fucking probably generational shit. I didn't recognize how much that contributed to the household. And instead I became the naggy wife. Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Why did you spend so much time over there? Like, why did you buy that at the grocery store? We don't need that. Like, you name anything negative, I became very negative. And I didn't realize any of this. I was totally not aware of how much Austin was doing and the contribution and the appreciation, because I was just blinded by checking boxes and feeling as though he should be doing other things. And then, of course, bitching to girlfriends. And in some ways they agree. But it wasn't like somebody pulled me aside and said, dude, you like have this guy who does this and this, like you should be grateful and thankful. Not that it was their job, but like I seriously did not recognize that until after we started doing like really deep work on ourselves, and then started talking about past instances, and we were able to, or I was able to like face them, realize, process, in a way that I didn't feel like real shame, because there's some things that I've done in my past that I have some real shame around. And so in this case, it just allowed me to see, holy cow, like I turned my husband into a check the box.
Well, and to check another box, you just need to get a job, make good money, 6 figures. I get a job offer for that, but it's 60 miles away. Who's going to take care of Nolan and pick up the dishes and do all the laundry? And I'm like, I don't know. It's what do you actually want? And that's like the conversation of what do you actually want? And what is a chore and what's not a chore and what would make you actually happy and all those things. And suddenly it's one thing I was trying to avoid is being complained about and being a loser. And there I was getting complained about for doing the things that I thought she would want. And it's okay. That comes back to what do you want as a person? And then what does that look like with a partner? And like, how do you like get connected? And that's taken some time and some effort. Yeah, okay, psychedelics and integration have definitely helped with that meshing process. But like at some level, like you don't have to do those things, but at some level, it's like, how do you connect? And it's if she had just told me in 2010, I don't like touching fucking dirty dishes, that would have saved 13, 14 years of like, ram, fucking, I don't want to do any dishes, motherfucker.
Yeah. It takes time to even able to communicate that, because those are like layers on layers, and to actually have that communication with your partner around like chores and what we're contributing, and be in a space of not triggering each other and not like getting into a fight about the chore, like that actually takes finessing. And like every couple's different, everybody's different, but that's like a level up stage. I feel like where you're really communicating about this and you're like, hey, I've been carrying this and it doesn't feel like just and all that, and you begin to like take responsibility. Because I think for me, one of the things that shifted the dishes, which have taught me so much, honestly, like at some point I realized I can't avoid doing the dishes because I'm gonna eat meals for the rest of my fucking life. I'm like, I really can't. I can't go anywhere. And this was pre-dishwasher. In fact, I never really used a dishwasher. That was like a novelty that I saw on TV, because once again, I grew up with that old school kind of Cuban mentality, and my mom did all the dishes like via sponge. Even when I had a dishwasher, I was like, I don't know what to do with it, so I'm just doing my dish by hand. But it was
like you dry them in the dishwasher, like some people do.
Yeah. I honestly, I had 2 places that I just didn't even touch it. This is like an alien thing for me. But it taught me some things are part of my life, so I've been avoiding responsibility, and there's more layers of that, like that I had to still have to like learn to take on, because then you shift it from, if I'm accepting the responsibility, whether it's something necessary or unnecessary or whatever, if it's a chore but you're accepting the responsibility, I feel that also changes the dynamic that you have with it. We're each responsible and we're supporting each other, and it's like me doing a certain chore is supporting the household, us together, not I gotta do this because I hate it.
She
so
says
like
I have to.
Yeah. Or, right. Well, then we stop playing out those like kind of unconscious dramas that seem to be coming into play with the chores, right? With all sorts of stuff, right?
Yeah,
it puts you fully back in that triangle. You're like, I'm a victim of just everything at the moment. It can really get you there. Just having the conversation and bringing this up, holding in for years, though I don't like to do this type of thing. It actually feels liberating to be able to release that and say that and like actually communicate it and have your partner be like, I can take care of that. or I can support you in that. Like, so as small as those things might seem, they're really huge. And one more thing is, even in the psychedelic space, sometimes the message that nobody wants to get, Lord knows I've been there, is you have to clean your house. And sometimes that's a real message that you get from the mushrooms. It's you gotta take care of what's in front of you that you've been avoiding, and you're like, man, did I really go on this journey and receive the message? I gotta clean. Yes, I did.
You're like, wait, you really want me to clean? I'm gonna go on a journey again and just yeah, you need to fucking clean. And then you go, I need to check for the third time. What do I need to do? You need to clean your fucking shit up and your energy leaks and all that shit. And it's whoa. So I need to clean up. Yes.
And sometimes it's not even the word clean. It's other things. It's like you need to do the work or whatever. And you it's all the same fucking thing.
Well, exactly.
It's like, okay, so there's this book. It's probably right here. It's called How to Grow by Marcus Bridgewater. And basically he says gardening in your garden is a way for you to clean up the weeds in your mind. And so if your garden's a mess, if your house is a mess, if your desk's a mess, if your digital profile is a mess, he's like, there's something up here that you need to like clean up. And so by cleaning your garden or organizing your garden or organizing your house, you're literally like defragging your brain.
Yeah.
And I've heard this 3 years ago when we did book club, and we read that book, and it was just like, there is really something to this. And like the other day, like, so her parents are coming in a week, and literally a month ago, we're like, we should just start cleaning a little bit at a time. And so for Shelly to
plan ahead
and allow it, because usually ADD is, no, I want to wait last second. And I'm like, yeah, and be tired, and then order to go food and make a huge mess. And once we'll clean it up, make cookies and make a fucking disaster, Tasmanian devil, right? But at this time, we were like, let's really do this. We cleaned the walls, we like scrubbed everything. We scraped out the caulking in the bathtub and on the ground, and we did the sink and we recaulked it. We were like having fun, joking around, and I made some videos. And of course, we made all kinds of jokes about caulk and that we should put it all over our Patreon account and stuff like that. So instead of it being a chore, we were like fucking around, having a good time. And sometimes she was just like, I need a break. I'm like, oh, film me real quick. This is funny. Look. So it's like a little bit at a time. And then I weeded out front by hand all these little weeds. And I time lapsed it. I was like, shit, like I'm really doing the work. Like it took me half an hour to do like this swath. And I was like, that looks fucking good. And then you're like, oh, how do I do that with my mind? How do I do that with my body? How do I show up better? And it's by doing what Dice said. Clean.
Yeah. Tending to.
I mean, I definitely said it, but I don't know if I've been on top of it. I mean, like with the garden and things like that, as you say that is, yes, like the weeds have gone nuts in the last few weeks. And yesterday we were like, all right, I can't look away anymore, right? And we started pulling them out. It's the same thing of, yes, that it's an internal thing. And now it's like you're cleaning up your own internal universe. And that is a very real thing. And I think that's the power. Honestly, chores, as much as there's that charge, it's so powerful. And this conversation is making me really see there's a lot of opportunities that we sometimes think are they're the opposite of that. But there's a lot of opportunities in what a chore is and what like we have to do and what we think is like gonna take work that is gonna allow us to grow. And I realized too, like when you say it's doing the work, for me for a long time, the word work I realized was a very triggering word for me, because what I learned back in my cultural programming is like doing work is not good. It's a sign that we're coming from, it's just a different like mindset where like you want to get to a place where you're like working and not doing like physical labor. That's what my parents are trying to avoid happening in my life, like that kind of thing that they might have been moving away from. So it's like work for me was always charged with, oh, that's gonna be a chore. It's gonna take effort. It's gonna be like, wow, my body's drained. You just told me to go to work. But when I shifted what that meant for me and that definition of work, wasn't experiencing that same thing in my body.
You know what, to piggyback off that, what's so interesting? I was taught something similar. Oh, you should go into science and be a patent agent and have a desk job and you'll be set. You got a master's degree and all this shit. Fuck, you know what I like doing? Fucking hanging out with people, moving my body, like heavy shit. Okay, it might not be the strongest bench presser, but like you want me to move logs? I can move logs all day long. That feels great to me. And I go in the backyard and I do the weeding and I'm like up taking care of the trees and all this stuff. And that feels good to me because I'm getting to move my body all these different ways. And then I thought about when I used to be in food science, I'd be in and out of the plant all the time. It'd be hot and outside and cool inside, like temperature change and heavy work. And I was like, oh, actually, looking back on it, I was like, I actually like that. I used to climb up onto tankers and load them and all this stuff. And I was like, wait. Then I go do a desk job and I like fucking hated it. And then I'm like, oh, you get back in like 2012, I worked in DC at the patent office. They're like, oh man, you get to work from home and you get to be behind your computer all day. And like after a few months, I was like, find myself like always wandering around, talking to people, looking for any way to have other time, which is like you go to like meetings or all this other stuff. And I'm like, oh, I'm not the grinder, dude. I'm the person that's supposed to go out and find people and talk to people and sometimes I can grind if I need to. But what I'm realizing is it's about finding the balance of the work and making the work like fun. Like I was trying to find the Gene Keys book and the Human Design book because that's work. That's doing work on yourself. But it's like, why does work and why does chores have such like negative connotations of shame and stuff around it? And I think Dice, like you kind of were hinting at a little bit of the bringing brought up as a child of like work is a punishment or chores are a punishment and that you have to do it a certain way and that work is 9 to 5 and if you work outside of 9 to 5 then you're grinding and oh no you don't want to like Shelly, she was told, why would you want to be a hairdresser? They don't make any money. Oh my God, you know how much money hairdressers, barbers make now? God damn. I'm like, I'll cut hair. I'm like, but there's more to it than just that. It's like the energetics of cutting the hair, the energetics of doing the work, of bringing your passion and getting paid for the things that, like we said it before, Dice, like you paid the most amount of money for the things you're best at and you do in the least amount of time. And it's some people that are now barbers and hairstylists, they're like doing their passion. And so they're getting paid well for that. And it's whose story was it that being a hairdresser or a gardener or landscaper, it's not a good thing. It's somebody else's story. Like when I was a teacher, I also was building fences. I had a great time building fences. That was fun. I got to move my body. I got to pour concrete. I got to like hammer stuff and throw shit and demolish stuff and cut stuff. Like why do we tell ourselves that, oh, only a good job is a tech job? What about movement? Movement is medicine, dancing, somatics, all like stuff like that, and like performing. So I see all these mindset shifts now, and I'm like, okay, this is really interesting.
Wow. I think that there's something interesting about what you're talking about where you're so kinesthetically engaged. Like you love building, you love getting up and doing stuff. There's something about chores that I think is really similar, which is you usually see a change at the end of it that you can't get as much in, say, a tech field or sitting at a desk, is like you're seeing tangible results almost immediately, where you're able by putting piece by piece together, you've all of a sudden built a fence or half of a fence. You see the work that you've done. I do think there can be that satisfaction attached and associated with chores when at the end of, say, a cleaning spree that you do, or if you decide I'm going to focus on this part of the room or this part of the house, all of a sudden you see that shift and now the energy is moving up and out, as opposed to this, okay, I have to do chores, I have to do work. There's like this crushing sort of sensation, but it actually frees up all of this energy to move up and out because you're clearing out the clutter physically like literally and figuratively. And so it can be really satisfying in that way. And I think part of it is because your body is so engaged in the process of doing chores. So if you can get over the pain of it, the suffering involved in it, then actually it feels good. And part of it is like connecting to the why. And that's what we've been doing more recently, is like, why do we clean? Not because our parents told us we should have a clean room, but actually we sleep better. And actually now there's more space for us to be able to look around and feel clear in our minds because our physical space is clear. And it's for both of us to contribute in a way equally or in a shared kind of fluid way. It's because we want to support one another, because we want our life to feel easeful and good, and not, oh, I have to carry the laundry downstairs because she says so, but actually like her life will be easier, and because of that means my clothes will get cleaned. And it's just like this regenerative system that works because you're connected to the reason why. That feels a lot better than doing it from this. I think there's a teenager part of me that can be very like, but I don't want to. And that's where I have to kind of override it and be like, I'm the adult now. And actually, like, the adult here is saying it's because it will help all of us feel better. We'll all be happier.
It's, for me, I don't know if anybody can relate. A lot of it is somebody else doing it for me, because that's what regulated my nervous system. So, meaning that I literally did, we worked passing in the night, and I did nights for a long time. So 15 plus years. And for me, I just became disassociated and not like around. So then other people picked up the slack of what I wasn't doing. And so what I've just kind of noticed as I've come back online, so to speak, is that young teenage version, because somebody else took care of it. So when I feel that she's like out, which she is not as much anymore, because I've really worked on that part of myself. And it does. Then I'm not angry about it. I'm not annoyed. Those things then don't sap my energy, because then for me, I would ruminate and be angry. Like, why do I have to do this? Why aren't they doing it? They're supposed to take care of me. And then I realized, yeah, they did for a long time. They really did hold up the foundation to the home. But now I get to hold my own foundation, especially when I'm like telling myself I don't have to be in the trap anymore. And so when my son or Austin decides to like, hey, do the dishes for me in whatever way, that's just an extra bonus, and to be grateful and thankful for it. And so I feel you on that teenage version. She hung out for a long fucking time for me. And I didn't realize it. I didn't realize how I became dependent on somebody else doing a ton of the chores around the house instead of me taking responsibility and taking care of it. It's also, you let me reflect, Dice, about creating space, like sitting with it and creating the space. And I've already kind of started by using a spray, and then just like continually creating that space, and especially the appreciation for all the walls that have held up, that kind of thing. I started going down like really that, and it just felt calmer. It like really did help to center and ground me, instead of feeling like the angry teenage, I want somebody else to do this.
We kind of moved to this house in about 10 years ago, right? In kind of a frantic way. Like, our landlords were like, call us on Valentine's at 8 in the morning on a Saturday. We're gonna sell the house. And I was like, okay, why are you calling me at 7:30 in the morning on a Saturday? Oh, I want to get the keys. I'm like, no, you can make a 48-hour appointment or whatever. I'm like, I'll talk to you later. But it's like just shit like that. And it was like moving frantically and like packing up everything, and didn't go through anything. And then the house got busy, and then like her mom had some medical problems come up right away. And it just, then things became a chore, right? Everything became a chore. It was like shit everywhere, boxes everywhere. Moved like quickly from a bigger house to a smaller house. And it was like, okay. And then this house has held space for all these things. And now it's like, how do we honor our house? We honor our house by cleaning it. So we clean the outside, we clean the inside. The winter came through, we like cleaning the gutters, we were pressure washing stuff. I ran into one of my former students, and he's a pressure washer dude. And I'm like, great, I'm gonna have him do the rest. So you can subcontract out chores, but some of the chores, you need to do them for your house, for your mental health.
And what comes up in my journey space? I need to do the work. I mean, like legit, like you said, it comes up and it comes up in so many different ways. It's you need to do the work and do the cleaning and do all of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real powerful analogy now for not just the household task, but like the inner work, the self work, growth. And I was thinking about this as we were talking, and we brought this up before. Like, just when we're talking about work and when we contrast that with like play, how like different that feels in the body, and how like kids can pretend and play like that they're doing all of these things that would be considered chores. There's a lightness to it when you see something as play versus where you see something as work. But a lot of this self work is considered also like a chore, a task. It has a heaviness, there's resistance, but it can also be in the play space. It can also be more fun. And once you get there, right, how that can ease the doing of the task, the getting of those things done. You're like, even when you're doing like inner work, I know I got to dive into some things that have happened. There's actually ways to move through that are lighter, and yes, in our relationship to it. But there's something that has come up for us a lot around the work and the play, and like how they're related, and how you can move through some of those things that are heavy or more work or more effort by kind of shifting into that playful space. We're kind of talking about this with the household chores. Maybe you're listening to some music and that makes it fun. Like you're creating space, like you're doing something that makes it a more enjoyable experience. And that can balance out like the unpleasant parts with, it's like now I associate like something different. Like for us, yeah, folding laundry can be really fun because we put on music and we do it together and we blast through it. That's a different energy, which just allows it to move forward.
Like right here, I was playing on Chat GPT real quick and asked, what's a chore? What's the opposite of a chore? And it said pleasure or hobby. And I was like, oh, so how do you turn a chore into a hobby or pleasure? Because some people are like, I fucking love cleaning my house. I was like, really? You clean mine? No, I just want to clean my house. And I was like, okay, fair enough. And then I'm like, okay, give me 10 words that are like hobby or pleasure: pastime, recreation, delight, diversion, enjoyment, leisure, amusement, indulgence, gratification, entertainment. And I was like, okay, it's okay. How do we take a chore and shift it a little bit? Like, for example, like I usually fill up the cars with fuel. Like I go take care of that, right? Every once in a while when we clean the car, like we'll go clean it together. Like we'll vacuum together. Usually we go get tacos before we go through, and then we can eat tacos while we're in the thing. So then that's becoming play, pleasure, ritual. And then also sometimes they got like disco music inside and we film like time lapse and slow-mo. It feels like we're in a rave or something. And so then we're taking the chore of cleaning the car and turning it into something kind of like fun. And so it's like, how do you do things like that? It's like by communicating and wanting to do it with your partner, because this kind of brings up the intimacy piece of like, how do you have more intimacy with somebody? And it doesn't just have to be sex. It could be like intimacy of we're going to go wash the car, we're going to get some tacos, we're going to vacuum the car, and then you're being part of it and you're putting your energy into the car and you're like honoring and appreciating the car and like from getting you where you need to go or you want to go. And it's like, how do you do that with chores? This is one example. Do you guys have anything that comes up like that, that a little bit more fun? It sounds like laundry folding for you guys is more little intimate activity with some music and stuff.
I mean, definitely. I would say I feel like when both of us are contributing, especially if we're doing it together, like I get so excited because I feel like we're both coming to the relationship in this sort of mutual ground where like because we're engaging in this activity that will ultimately bring gratification, because we have clean clothes and we have these things, it actually creates, and because we're doing it together, it creates this level of intimacy that then sets us on a path for whatever happens next. Like we're already connected through the process of engaging in a task together. So for me, that's kind of what I think of. Cooking, like cooking creates intimacy if we're both cooking together. Those are
I've noticed that recently as I've dropped my guard and allowed like help instead of just doing it all myself, is that there's a different level of intimacy. And then I also recognize that it's almost like we're starting to go to our roles. So I would have this in the ER when we got to all know each other and our skills and the embodiment of us as nurses. And basically you would always know, and they would just go straight into those roles. And that's what I'm seeing in the kitchen. Like he just knows automatically where his position is going to be, what he's going to take care of. But then that's where I'll let him know the ingredients and whatnot. And then it is. And so it's a different level of intimacy to trust one another in that and not be offended by.
Before, our kitchen is somewhat smaller.
Yeah.
Probably 15 feet by 8 feet, like a little tight. Before we would kill each other in the kitchen. But now, like I kind of go in my area and I'm really good at cutting and cleaning and prepping and like expediting. And she's kind of more at the stove doing the thing. Like we can flip that, but usually that works good for us. If we're barbecuing, most people are like, oh yeah, that's the man's job to be on the barbecue. And I'm like, no, I make the fire. She does the barbecue. So it's like, what works for us? What works for other people? And so we had initially booked this week and next week to talk about chores, but I feel like we've kind of covered most of the chores stuff today. I think we could do something else next week. Is there anything you guys kind of want to wrap up with the chores, or how people can get a little more connected with each other? What do you think on that?
Yeah.
One of the things that Shelly brought up was asking for help. And I do think there's like a lot in this area around that. Like for me, and I don't really remember like the early stages of our relationship, how this all came about, but I think like I at some point took it upon myself to do the things. And through, as we know, like Dice's background and story, through my doing of things, that allowed him to not do things. And then I resented his not doing things as something I could use against him later, or like that I resented about what he was or wasn't doing or contributing. And it took a lot of self-reflection and work to be like, actually, first of all, if you're feeling resentful around something you haven't even brought up to him, you're immediately like putting him in the trap, because you're making him the villain when he wasn't even part of the conversation. So there was this aspect of, I don't want to do the emotional labor of having to ask. I want him to already know that these are things like, obviously, if we're eating, we're going to have dirty dishes. That is obvious. We're in this life doing this thing. If I notice it, you can notice it. So I need you to just do it without my asking, because I don't want to ask, because that takes emotional labor. But if I don't ask, then if I don't talk about it, at least communicate about it, then here we are. So that took some like adulting and responsibility and looking and introspection of, you're doing all the things and yet you're mad at him that he's not doing all the things. So where is that? The math doesn't math there. So if you want him to do things, you need to actively communicate that and not just expect him to read your mind. So it created a lot more ease after I basically had a few like breakdowns of, I'm going to need some assistance here. And some of it, like something else that came up earlier in this conversation was like, there are phases and spaces and times that one of us is going to have to carry certain things more. If we keep bringing up this 6-week period of time, like that Dice is performing in the show, like it's dinner time and he can't be focused on making meals and doing all this stuff while simultaneously needing to be transitioning into work. So that makes sense for me to carry that load. So I do think a lot of it too is looking at your life in the moment and being like, what's realistic for us now? And sometimes I'm going to be doing 80% and you're going to be doing 20, but then there's other times where I'm going to need you to do more, and because I have to do something less. And so I think part of it is that just being able to like shift and flow and have that conversation and not be so stuck and rigid in like the roles of what like each person has to do. That works for us, at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's, like I was saying, there's a huge opportunity if you actually have the conversations to, though they can be triggering and charged around chores and around what actually works, what's behind it, what support you might need, what support, clearing those things and like talking about them and saying them and getting into a space where you can start removing that charge. And like just based on this conversation, like I really want to actually start looking at like where we're at now and where we want to be and how do we shift or get to a space where it's more like cohesive and more, it just makes more sense for where we are now. And I think that's a continuous conversation that
Yeah.
you have to have.
And it shifts with time, like Annika was saying. Right now, you're doing a 6-week show. There's a lot there, right? That's a big commitment of what you're doing, and it's like the push and the pull. And it's not okay. I did the dishes this week, and now you got to do them. That it's where's kind of the balance, and it's not about equal necessarily. It's like kind of what works for each person, which might not even seem equitable if it's just dishes, but what does the totality of the relationship look like? Of where's the balance on all the quadrants or in all the areas of everyone's life? And like we said in the beginning, what works for one couple may not work for another. And finding that symbiosis and synergy within each relationship is important. And the way to do that is to feel safe, to feel connected, to feel fulfillment by talking about these things in a way where people are like, oh, I kind of see where you're coming from. And I see what maybe teenage Shelley wanted. And it's like seeing her and seeing me and where I came from or where anybody came from and finding kind of like that middle ground, knowing that the middle ground can change based on like current things. And I like what Annika said about what's your current reality and what could you do in your current reality to make things like flow. I like that. This is good. I think a lot of people are going to be very interested in
I'm realizing I came in hot and heavy, like very pissed off about chores. And now I'm like having the self-awareness of the chores and how beneficial. Because even when you brought up Dice, like all of the negativity with chores and how it's used. I worked in the jail system. It was used in the jail system to for punishment. Or that's how I viewed it. But now I'm like, maybe it isn't a punishment. Maybe it's a time for a lot of self-reflection if you allow yourself to do that.
Yeah, there's like the place where I learned to do the dishwashing meditation. That's part of like some of the self work that I do and the Gurdjieff Foundation. There's a quote from I think Gurdjieff that's something like one like cleaning the floors is worth more than reading 1,000 books or something to that extent, where it's like actually
I feel that in my
doing
body.
that thing that you really are avoiding can have so much more for you than all this information and all this other things. It's something I reflect on, and it's something that I will be taking from this conversation to go forward and give myself a realistic assessment of like where am I with work and chores and like what's my relationship to it, and to know that that is the message that is I've already received, to really not avoid the things that like have to be attended to. And even in our language, like how are we talking about it is that's gonna start creating that in our bodies, because our body is we're living in our own cosmic system here, and those thoughts will then permeate like through your body and they'll affect you. So it's like the chores are really connected to this internal work. It's to like
on the Joe Dispenza stuff. It's if you want to have a hard time with chores, if you want to fucking hate chores, that's exactly what you're gonna get. And it's like, okay, all right, let me send it out to you. How can I clean up in a way that like feels good for me and feels good for my business partner and boo over here, and that we can do it with grace and ease and put effort where we want to put effort. And it's okay, that might look different. Maybe she likes to do something and maybe I like to do something, and it's like figuring that out, or like doing it separate or doing it together, or with music or without music, or like
a timer.
Yeah.
Yeah, or like pairing the thing you hate with something you don't mind doing. Like
I've realized because the body doubling is how I can get my stuff done. And it usually ends up being with Austin, although there's a few online communities when we're able to dial in, we'll dial in and do it at that time. But now what I've started doing is just openly communicating what help I need and then going and doing it. Because what will happen is I'll see a disorganized mess and I'll just instinctively be like, I can't even I know this needs to be done. And I just will ask him, can you please help arrange and let me know? And I'll just go take care of it. But I need somebody else to process it because I literally just see it and I'm like overwhelmed and I can't put it together because the old version would just keep ignoring it. And then next thing, I had a ton of stuff in my house, a ton of things I hadn't figured out.
Throw it all away and then buy more.
But I mean, you name it.
Well, like about a week ago, she was cleaning out her closet and we had it on time lapse. And basically I don't know how.
I forgot we even taped.
I don't even know if it would be a fight, but it was like she was on one side and I was on the other, and she was overwhelmed with shit everywhere, and she was yelling and screaming at me, and I was like, "Okay, you remember this emotionally intelligent man thing? Yeah." I'm like, "Yeah, okay. You don't get to yell at me like that anymore." That was 5-10 years ago. So either we're gonna go do our own thing for a little while, or let's try to figure out what's really bothering you. And it would have been awesome to have it on camera, but it wasn't. But literally, we like sat in the discomfort of that, right? And I'm like, what was really going on is she was sensory fucking overload of all the clothes on the ground and all the shit everywhere, and like the room looked like a fucking disaster, which it often does before it finally comes together. And I'm like, what's the biggest thing that's bothering you right now? We need to mow the lawn and all this stuff. I'm like, no. What's going on in this room, in these four walls right now? And this is like the holding the structure for someone, right? And this could be anybody doing it. I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, let's just start with the closet. Are you open to starting with the closet? And that's the part where she has to be open, and let's put back things that you want to keep. Oh, you can't hear us. Okay.
You're back.
All right. Yeah, we had a little issue and my Cat 5 cord isn't working for some reason. Okay. I was just saying, you want to start with the closet? Yes. Okay. Put everything on the bed. Let's hang up everything you want to keep. Let's clean the closet and the wall and the floor. Put it back. And it's just starting with one thing. But in that moment, it was like a safety connection fulfillment thing. So it was like, blah, 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 all this shit. Everyone was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Why are you not feeling safe? And it's like slowing down enough that we can have a conversation. It's okay. What's bugging you the most? It's just overwhelming amount. Okay. Can we start here? And that was like the communication, but most couples just go at it and like with that destructive interference. And it's, if we could just figure out, is there one thing we could align on? And it was like the closet. And so once we aligned on the closet, then the rest of it just kind of fell into place.
I think it was also some not wanting to ask for help to do it. I wanted to take care of it on my own because I've done it on my own. But now there are times I get very overwhelmed and it's anxiety, and I recognize that. But sometimes I just can't get my mind to coordinate and all of that. And I need someone just to be like, okay, this is how I see it. And then all of a sudden it'll be like click. And then I'll be like, okay, I see it. And it's a grounding issue, among other things. I mean, I'm fortunate that we're working together on it. I'm very fortunate for that.
You guys have any final thoughts, or what would you like people to do with all this information?
I think for everyone to examine like where they're at in relationship to these chores and look at all sides of it. What's the opportunity? What's the resistance? And in communication with your partner, especially if you have a partner, like how important that is, and to really bring cohesion to the relationship.
Just some real honesty about needs, desires. Like, I think something that was really helpful for us was just making a list of what needs to get done. What are things that we routinely need to get done? Like, we may have pretended like we hadn't needed to, but what do we really? So being realistic, being honest, and then being honest with each other about what can we do? What do we actively not want to do. For somebody who has sensory stuff, like I wash, if like I will wash my hands 400 times if I'm cooking something and there's different things that I'm touching. Like I will wash them between anything, any task that I do. There are certain sensory things that just like they send me, they drain me. So being actually honest about those things, like this depletes me far more than this does. So this is something I can do. And if you can find some sort of middle ground together and really be honest, that requires awareness of yourself. But if you can be honest about those things with your partner, that's a great starting point, because it can feel so freeing to actually say what it is you need and want. But you have to trust that your partner can hold that.
Well, like you brought up a great point too. It's like you could take on a post-it note and you could both write, okay, what do you really want to get done today? What do I really want to get done today? And then come together and talk. Or what are you good at and you like doing? What do you fucking hate doing? Right. And if we both look at what we hate doing list and it both aligns with what we both hate, that's something that we hire someone to do if possible. Or if not, we just like, we're gonna do this together. Grab my arm, let's get it done. But there's what's the saying? Like there's strength in misery together or something like that. Doing something that you both just like you need to get it done, but you just do it together and you just get it done.
Mm-hmm.
If she likes doing something and I don't, but trying to find that balance. And I found that post-it note activity has actually been pretty helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good.
Yeah, I like that.
You got anything else?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What do you want people to do? You want them to follow your show? What do you want people to do?
Yeah, definitely follow me on Instagram, fuzzy_dice. I mean, if you're in Portland, definitely check out this show. It's a mind blower. And even if you're not, it's worth actually looking it up. It's called Passing Strange, and watching the version that is on Tubi. It's a really interesting show. And that's it. And like we work together with couples, and it's something that we're really leaning into, like getting into the space of you get harmoniously connected. So I love these conversations that we're having, because it's something that we've been inviting in more and more. Mm-hmm.
Like those reels that went out with some of you guys.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you for doing that. That was really cool.
Yeah.
Use the script and then video AI. Yeah, people were commenting on them and people were talking to me on the back channel about them. Yeah, that couple in Portland, they were saying some stuff and it was really interesting. And I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, oh, okay, good.
Cool.
Well, we'll be back. We'll be back for more enlightening conversations.
We'll have to figure out what to talk about next time. Shelly was having a bunch of ideas the other day, so that's
honestly, capture that's just things to navigate as a couple is such a big thing, because I don't think a lot of people are truly taught how to be in relationship with one another. And it's one thing to navigate this, it's a whole nother thing to like actively have enough self-awareness to be able to bring that level of awareness into an intentionality into the relationship. And so many times and I talked about this last time, like I had this idea that if you were compatible, it meant you just naturally were compatible. And it's like you have to take responsibility for yourself and each other and your life and what you want from it and for it. And that requires like showing up in a certain type of way, being honest and being able to truly communicate. And if you can't do that, that's just information. But I think like when we first started talking about like working with couples, this was like years ago, we're like, we haven't figured out, we don't know how to be as a couple. Like we have been together for years, but that doesn't mean we're doing things successfully. There's a lot of dis-ease here. And we had to actively look at that and figure that out, because who are we to be here talking about relationships and talking about how to be intimate and how to communicate effectively if we haven't really figured that out for ourselves. So it's been a really cool process then to be able to sit and be on, not it's always a process, but to kind of be on the other side of that way of thinking and saying, okay, here's what we're actually doing right. And here's what is now actively working after a lot of trial and error, a lot of dis-ease, to then build in the ease. So I love these conversations because I think it's important.
Oh yeah, that's like the whole thing is like, you know how to fix something. You might not know how to fix everything. You might not have a perfect relationship, but you do know how to fix or find common ground on things. And when people see that, they're like, oh yeah, they worked through that. And I see myself what they're doing and where they're at, where I'm at. I'd like their help. And then suddenly you're working with them or they're working with us or whatever. And it's what does that look like for each person, for each relationship? And really all this relationship stuff starts like the change, what they say, the change starts with you. And it's like you start taking care of yourself and start doing that cleanup work on yourself. And suddenly it's easier to have a conversation with someone because you're like, hey, this is what I'm doing and it's going pretty well. And this is where I think I need some support. And this is where I'd like to go with you if you'd like. And what would that look like? And that there is like another form of intimacy. Yeah. So you want people to follow you?
Oh, yes. Oh, I wasn't sure.
We're circling around.
Okay. You can follow me on Instagram, the Shelly McLeod. And then we also do one-on-one coaching and advisement and mentoring and such like that. Right now, I'm also hosting in-person events, which are fun. And then you and I have a content creation group. It's more your baby, but I'm helping you also.
Yeah, we've been
a membership. That's exciting.
Yeah, we're doing a new quarterly membership for people where we like interview them on Zoom or they give me and her footage and we put it together and make little social media packs. And we also are doing behind the scenes work so people can get to know everybody a little bit better. Because what we find is everyone wants to do this kind of stuff, but they just don't have time or they don't have the equipment or whatever. And so Shelly and I have found a little niche of we help people get done all the things that they've been wanting to get done and we help them get it done, and that can be a little overwhelming sometimes. So sometimes we have to help them with the emotions and like navigating and all that because it's wow, I'm getting this done and now people are seeing me and they're having fun and they're learning about me, and I'm like, well, that's great because now they want to hire you to do whatever you're best at. And so that's been really fun. Right. So you can follow me, the Meta Paddock. You can follow us, the Couples Take On. And of course, I'll drop all that in the description. Any last words? I think we've covered it. Anything else?
Thank you so much. Just thank you for having us.
Thank you. Fantastic. And we'll hit you up about next week.
Yeah,
what we'll
figure
do.
it out.
Yeah. And have a great show. And
yeah.
Annika, thank you for holding dice in this so dice can be creative and enjoy that feminine creativity, and you're holding some masculine structure for y'all. I think showing everybody kind of the duality of the universe and within couples is a really good thing. So thank you for modeling that for everybody.
Awesome. Oh, and I don't make content on Instagram, but I help people move better and feel better with movement and really just genuinely finding ease in life, whatever that looks like. So if that resonates, if you're needing help and support in that way, you can reach out to me. My Instagram is at Onyxka, like Onyx, ONYXKA Annika, ANNIKA on Instagram.
Awesome.
Okay, let me end the recording. Oh, here it is. Okay, I have to go do it on the other computer. Hold on. Be right back.
We did.
It still says recording on my It's just the
Oh,
tech
yeah.
stuff that like it's overwhelming to me because I don't know. It's overwhelming.